welcome back to my channel, Book Talks with Yo. My name is Yoanna and today we are starting a new writing vlog. So, I guess you've all heard about this book. This is Save the Cat Writes a Novel, or at least you've heard about the previous one, which was more about screenwriting. And I've heard about it as well. I've heard many people try it, and I think most of the reviews I've read are quite positive, and I've heard many people love it and love the plotting method it gives them. So I decided to check it out, and I am planning to read and do the exercises that it tells you to do. And while I'm doing that, I will try to do the outline for my next novel. Not the historical fiction one, because for that one I am planning to use another method, but this is something for another video. I'm probably going to use the snowflake method, but this is more about my romantic book that I am planning to write as well. So yeah, welcome to the start of this vlog, and let's get reading and writing. So I finished reading the first chapter and taking some notes, and this chapter was all about writing a story-worthy hero, and it was actually very interesting. And although I knew most of the things that it said, it still had some very useful insights. And I started planning my novel. I spent a long time trying to come up with names for my characters, which I always do. It takes me so much time sometimes. Sometimes I have the names before I even have the characters figured out, but this time it was just a lot of work. But I do have my two main characters. I have their names. I have a bit about their reasons for the plot. Because oh yeah, maybe I should have mentioned that this is I talked about this in a previous video, but this is about a sort of a rom-com that is taking place in the same setting as my first rom-com, which is Box of Matches, and it takes place on a cruise ship, and I decided to make it in some way part of a series, but they're all standalone books. They're just have something in common, the setting in this case, which is the cruise ship, and there will be Easter eggs in the three books, because I'm planning to be for it to be 3 books, and there will be Easter eggs in the 3 books for the other 2. And yeah, in this one the idea is that they're going to be, I will explore the trope of fake dating, but yeah, I've come up with 2 pretty interesting reasons, and I'm really excited to see where planning with this book gets me. In the first chapter it talks about how you should choose one hero, even if you have multiple characters, even if you're following multiple perspectives, which I'm planning to do. There's always one character that's the most important in a way. Like, they're all important, but this character is, let's say, the hero of your story. And there's a checklist at the end of this chapter which helps you see which hero is the one that is your main hero or something like this. So yeah, I did this and I have my hero figured out. And something I really liked about this first chapter was that it talked about how a good hero needs three things essentially: a problem or flaw that needs to be fixed, a want or a goal that the hero is pursuing, and a need or a life lesson to be learned. And the difference between a want and a need is what basically makes the story. And a want is what the character think will fix those problems that they have and what they think that will fix their life and better their life. And the need is what will actually really fix this problem, what will fix their life. And the difference between those two is, yeah, what will make the B story of your novel, because they divide it into A story and B story, and A story is the external conflict and B story is the internal conflict. But yeah, I'm liking it so far. I'm excited that I have this character figured out, those two characters figured out, but I still haven't learned more about the second character, but I hopefully will while I'm reading this book. But yeah, I just wanted to share this with you, and now I'm going to start the second chapter, which is about plotting. So yeah, it's the beat sheet, aka the end of all your plotting problems. It's a lot longer, but essentially will plot out my whole book. So yeah, I will update you when I'm ready with this. So I'm working with the second chapter now, which is about the famous beat sheet of the Save the Cat, the original one. And I haven't yet started to plot out my, work on the plotting out of my new novel, but because they present a summarized version of the 3-act structure of the beat sheet, and each point or each beat that has to be in every act. I was reading them, it's just a summarized version, and they're going to go into details of all of them and further on in the chapter. But yeah, just a summarized version of it, like what has to be in act 1, what has to be in act 2, and what percent this should be. While I was reading this, I was thinking that even without knowing this, because this is the first time I'm reading this book and the first time I'm hearing about the beat sheet, I somehow did my previous book, the previous rom-com that I want to be in this series. I did this rom-com according to the structure, sticking to every single beat of it without even realizing it, which is cool. Yeah, I thought it was cool, so I wanted to share with you. And yeah, it's something about the opening image, how you have to state the theme, the setup, and so on and so on. And now they're going to go into details and say which goes where and so on. So I will be plotting out my next novel using this now. But yeah, I was just really excited how my last novel is sticking to this. And although I do have to revise it and probably rewrite it, as I want to probably change the POV that it was written in. I want to change it from third person to first person, which is essentially going to change a lot in the book. So I will be rewriting it, but I'm glad that the plot is still sticking to the structure that it should be. So yeah, I will continue reading and I'll update you later. So I've just finished reading and taking notes on the beats of the first act, and it was written in a very nice way. It was very detailed, and it tells you how much, how many percent it takes of the book, or it should take of the book, what each beat should be, like the opening image, the theme stated, the setup, the catalyst, and the debate. And it tells you what each scene is, whether it should be a single scene beat or a multiple scene beat. It tells you what you should do. It gives you examples with other popular books. It was actually very useful, and now that I've taken notes on those, I'm thinking of going back to my plot idea and trying to figure out what each of these beats is for my story, and then I will move on to Act 2. So now that I have figured out everything for Act 1, at least for one of my characters, for the main character, Hailey, I am ready to move to Act 2. And it is broken down into a few beats as well. It's break into Act 2, B story, fun and games, midpoint, bad guys close in, always lost, and dark night of the soul. And again, as in the first one, there is a very detailed description of each one, how much it should consist of the story, what you should include in it, and so on and so forth. And I will take notes on this now, read it, take notes, and then after I'm done with my notes, I will do the same as with the first act and go back and do this for my story, for my characters. And I'm really excited so far. I'm really liking the style of this, and I'm really liking how detailed the description here is, because it's really helping me brainstorm ideas and figure out the plot. Because the thing is that I have the idea, I know my characters, I can already see them interacting in my head, but there are so many things about the plot that I don't have figured out. And I feel like this way, when I'm reading this and making those notes, I'm going to have a more consistent plot, and I'm going to avoid any plot holes that might occur later. So yeah, I'll just continue reading and writing now. And I finished taking notes of all of those, and I think I get what I mean. And now it's time to go back and do this for my story. I realized that I've been putting a lot of pressure unconsciously on myself about like figuring out the plot now. And yeah, I don't really need to have everything figured out, because yeah, I don't right now exactly, but I feel like I will go back and rewrite and add stuff as I go. Now I just want to have the basic skeleton of the story, so I can go with it and see whether the book works for me. This is why I'm trying to plot out my novel right now using the book, because I want to see whether using those tips makes it easier for me to figure a plot that I have no idea of yet. But I have the basics of the story. I know what I want to happen, but not exactly. So I'll see now. And reading about Act 2 actually made me realize that yes, I really have to go back and rewrite the previous story, because although it fit the idea of Act 1 and most of Act 2, it still doesn't really have all the elements. And I feel that this is a thing that the story has been lacking, as although I've been through a few rounds of it and I've sent it to a few beta readers, I still felt like something was missing. And I think that if I go back and just rewrite it a bit using this structure, it would just make the story better. But more about this later. Now I'm just gonna focus on this story, and I'll try to plot out Act 2. So I've finished taking notes for the second act, for my story, plotting it out. At a few places I've just put to be figured out later, like I've put a bit of the things that I figured out, and then I've put to be figured out more later or to be fleshed out more. But at least I have the basis that I have to work with, so I'm ready to just move on to Act 3, which is the final one. I will first, as always, take notes on each beat. Is just 3 beats in this one, so it should be quicker, and then I will plot it out for my novel and see where I have to go next. So I finished taking notes for Act 3 and for the 3 beats that they're in Act 3, and I took some notes for like my novel that I'm talking out with this, But my notes here are very vague because the Act 3 is more or less based on everything that has happened in Act 2. And since in Act 2, I do have a lot of notes for Act 2, but I don't have exactly everything figured out. I do want to go back in a bit, not right now because I don't really have many ideas about this plot, but I feel like when I start really figuring out my characters, I'm planning to make my character profile sheets because this always helps me, and I'm sure that when I make my character profile sheets I'll be able to go back and write everything else for Act 2 that I was missing, and when I do that I'll be able to write more precisely things about Act 3. But I do have some notes, I know what I have to do, and yeah, I'm excited to do it. And at the end of this chapter there is a test to show whether you've done the acts correctly, whether your character is changing enough and stuff like this. So I will just browse through them now and see whether the ideas that I have answer those questions, and then after a while when I actually plot out my novel more details, I will go back again and check with this test. But yeah, I'm ready with this chapter of this book. So now that we are done with those acts, we are ready to proceed to the next chapter, which is Not Your Mother's Genres, 10 genres to fit any story, even yours. So what I think that would be is, it would talk about the 10 most common genres, or not most common genres, but 10 genres that can include in themselves all types of books. Yeah, basically this is the caption. But yeah, I think this is it, and then I think after this you have a chapter dedicated to each genre and how you can use the beads, and I think there are examples from famous books, or yeah, I think this is what is going to happen. So I'll see which genre my book fits in, and then I'll probably read that one chapter right now because I don't really need to read all of them for this precise moment, or yeah, at least this is what I think. I haven't started reading it, so at least this is what I think now, but yeah, I'll see and I'll let you know. So I was right about what this chapter included, and it was written in a very interesting way, as it talked about not the typical genres that we know that according to this book are more according to the tone of the book, and they were called story genres, as this is more about what the story includes and what type of transformation the hero is going through. And another very interesting thing that I really liked about this chapter is how it talked about our obsession as writers, or people who want to be writers, our obsession to create something new, create something that has never been done before, which is an unrealistic goal to have, because there are so many books, there are tons of books, and the chances of us creating something that has never ever been done before is just chances are slim. And it's okay, because we shouldn't be striving to do that. We should instead be trying to create something fresh using the story elements that we know that work. And this is essentially the idea of why in this book they create those 10 genres or 10 story genres, and they try to fit all types of books in those 10 genres. And the genres have very interesting names as well. But the thing is that sometimes a book can fit more than 2 genres, more than one genre. It can fit 2 or 3 genres. And in my case, with my book, I think it is this case, because I think it kind of fits 2 of the genres. What it says in this chapter is that sometimes this happens and you have to just decide which one it fits more, but this can happen while you're writing and editing and revising and so on. So for now at least, I think that 40% of my story is rites of passage, which is the stories that are dealing with natural parts of life like death, separation, middle life crisis, quarter life crisis, and so on and so on. And my book kind of has this element. It's not so main for the story, but it is kind of the driving force of a big part of the story. But this is why it's only 40% this, and the other 60% is body love, which is the transformative power of love and friendship, stories in which the hero is changed by someone else, or at least the catalyst for this change is someone else's someone else brings about the change. They are important or vital for this change, and this is a big part of my story, as this is a romantic story. So yeah, I think 60% is this. And it also, I've read those two like separate chapters for those two story genres, and in them it says the few parts that it has to have. And the first one, the rites of passage, it needs to lead to acceptance of this part of life that the hero has to go through or deal with. And the other one, the body love, has to have an incomplete hero, a counterpart, and a complication. And I think that my story has all those elements, so yeah. And now all I have left from this book, really, because I'm not going to read the genres that I'm not currently writing, because there is just no point, is I'm going to write how to write killer loglines and dazzling synopsis, because I am very bad at this. And the other one is just, I think, you got problems, I got solutions, so I think it's just common questions or something like this, but I'll see. Yeah, I'll see what happens there. But so far I'm actually very impressed, and I love how there are beat sheets for famous books at the end of each story genre, so you can kind of have an illustration of what they mean. And for the body love one, it was Everything Everything by Nicola Jung, and I've read this book, so it was no spoiler for me. I didn't read the one for Rites of Passage because it's going to be a spoiler, because it's a kite runner and I don't want to spoil this book for me. But yeah, I read that one and I have even more ideas about what I want to write. And this is actually something that it was said in the book, that when you are writing something, in order to be a good writer, you obviously have to be a good reader, you have to read a lot. But since there are so many, as we said, tons of books, you can't read all of the books there are, so it's good to focus on reading books that are in your story genre in order to see how other people have done it before you. You're not going to steal their ideas, but you're gonna get inspired by them. And the author herself, she says that sometimes when she's writing a story and she feels stuck, or she feels this writer's block or creative block, she just reads a book from her story genres or watches a movie, because movies also fit those genres, and this usually helps her deal with this block and gets her inspired. So yeah, I think that it would be very useful to know which story genre my story is in, so I can turn to those books in times of need. But yeah, as I said, now I'm going to move to the last two chapters, and then I'm going to share my overall opinion and thoughts on this book. So I finished reading this and I finished taking my notes, and I can say that I am actually really surprised by how much I love this book and by how many notes I took. And actually the last two chapters were probably what made it even more special for me, because yeah, I love the beat sheets, I love the 10 story genres, but the last two chapters were really useful. And one of them was how to pitch your book and how to write a logline and a short synopsis. And a logline is essentially you pitching your story in just one sentence. And they give you this formula that you can use using your beat sheet previously. And it just magically worked, because I've always been struggling with writing synopsis, and I've never written a logline before. So yeah, I've always been struggling with summarizing my book in a sentence or a paragraph. It's always been a nightmare for me. And this time it just worked, and I'm actually loving it. I still need to rework the short synopsis because I need to figure out some details from my beat sheet before, but this will happen as I start writing. But my logline turned out very nicely, and I'm actually planning to use the same thing for my previous few novels, because I have no idea how to summarize them. But yeah, I was really impressed, and this was probably my favorite thing of the whole book. But yeah, and the last chapter was just the author giving us some further further advice and further tips based on frequently asked questions in her workshops. And those really worked for me, and those really helped, because I've been wondering those same questions, or at least some of them, throughout my journey of reading this book. And the last thing that she does is she gives us the beat sheet that she started working with on her story, on her novel, The Geography of Lost Six, which, by the way, is a novel that I've been wanting to read for quite some time, and I have no idea that was the same author, but now I want to read it even more after reading the beat sheet. I see what she did there, but I'm not mad at it, I want to read it. But yeah, she gives us the beat sheet of the first beat sheet that she created when she first had the idea, and then how this changed when she started writing, which changed completely, to be honest. And I'm glad it did, because it sounds like a lot more interesting book. So yeah, this is essentially her trying to tell us that it's okay to not have everything figured out. It's okay to change things. Oh, and another advice that she gives is to use a corkboard, or like an online software that I have that I just couldn't find. But I am a visual learner, so I think I'm gonna use the corkboard. So you basically use this corkboard and you divide it into Act 1, Act 2A, and Act 2B, so 2 parts of Act 2 and Act 3. And then you use like sticky notes or just like some cards that you can pin on this board, and you write the different scenes that you want to fit in each act according to the beats that they give you before this. And I'm thinking I'm probably going to do this very soon, because this is going to be really helpful for my story. And yeah, I think I'm really excited. I'm honestly really excited, and I'm feeling so inspired and so motivated to write, which essentially is the ultimate test for this book. It made me inspired, it made me excited to write, so yeah. And lastly, another thing that I really loved was that it called the first draft a discovery draft, which is a new notion for me. Like, I've always thought of the first draft more like a zero draft, and you know, me telling myself the story, as Terry Pratchett says. But I've never called it a discovery draft, and I think I'll start calling it a discovery draft from now on, because this is you discovering the world, discovering the story, and then in the further drafts you're going to present it to the readers as well. So yeah, I think this is my favorite thing now. But yeah, I think that pretty much sums up my writing vlog, my trying save the cat, write a novel book. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on my new videos. Please let me know down in the comments if you've read this book and if you use the beat sheets, and if they're helpful for you. And yeah, again, thank you so much for watching, and I really hope to see you all next time. Until then, have a smiley week. Bye!